Welcome to Lemuria's Cards and Horrors, the best store for all your gaming and haunting needs. I'm Matthew, and today we're doing another episode of Creatures in Graveyards, where we're bringing magic content creators and community members to talk about their favorite cards and horrors. Today I have Liliana with me. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Liliana. I'm DefiantNecro on both Twitch and Twitter, where I post inane takes about EDH and occasionally cEDH and stream magic on Twitch. Occasionally also posting about spooky music, makeup looks, and Japanese pro wrestling. So if any of that interests you.
Which it should. Awesome stuff. So did you want to do cards or horrors first?
This morning, I watched the movie we're going to be talking about just to keep it fresh in my mind. Okay. So I would love to talk about the movie first.
Okay. And what movie did you pick?
I picked a film that is 8 years older than I am myself. That is probably one of my favorite movies, like, period, not just horror movies. It's John Carpenter's The Thing from 1982. You kids at home can do the math and figure out how old I am. Phenomenal film. Phenomenal film.
Definitely a classic that had multiple people kind of submit that one that they wanted to talk about. You got to it first, and they wanted to switch after. But yeah, it's a absolute classic of a movie. It's one of those movies that is, at this point, it's talked about a lot, and I still don't think it's talked about enough.
I agree 100%. I mean, there's so many things to talk about with it, right? Where do we even begin with this? John Carpenter is a phenomenal filmmaker in all rights, but like with that one, he just knocked it out of the park. Also, his scores are phenomenal as well, which I feel like really contributes to the atmosphere of suspense and dread that makes the film. Because, like, obviously, the practical effects in the movie are like one of the most massive selling points for it. Yeah. Because, like, you know, it's the early 80s. There's not like CGI or anything like that. And I think the practical effects in The Thing specifically, like a lot of movies from that era, but especially The Thing, are just like so next level that they still, in many instances, hold up today. And obviously, that's like a huge highlight for the film. But like, I feel like just the thematic, this air of suspense and dread, and like you can't trust anybody, the paranoia that permeates the entire film is just like, the atmosphere is so good. It's just so unsettling the whole time, and the score really contributes to that.
Yeah, like the film gets, the practical effects do take a lot of the conversation up, where that's what this, because in a lot of horror specifically, people will talk about how great practical effects are and how they're the best thing, blah blah blah, and they point usually to this movie or something like American Werewolf in London or something like that to like why practical effects are amazing. But this movie doesn't just do that, which I kind of, to an extent, think a movie like American Werewolf in London does. That is kind of the highlight. Here I think it's like the effects are on that level, and the suspense is on that level, and the acting is on that level, and just it's all super high level.
Got Kurt Russell and Wilford Brimley, and like just some all-star cast in there, delivering great performances, which, like, especially for horror in like the 80s and 90s, especially, like some of it can be really campy, right? But like they do such a fantastic job of just like sucking you in and making it this air of paranoia and suspense just so intense for the entire movie. Like, you know, there's that famous one-liner about being on the edge of your seat, but like you're literally like, holy shit, what the can I curse on here? We didn't cover that before.
Yeah, you're fine.
You're just like, holy shit, what the fuck is going to happen next? Because like, and I mean, like, so another thing like that is kind of a theme in a lot of Carpenter's films is this kind of like Cthulhu-esque, like Lovecraftian situation going on with the horror. Because like obviously The Thing isn't like, and it's not explicitly like a Lovecraftian horror, but it is very much in that vein because it's like a creature from outer space, right?
Yeah.
That is otherworldly and unfathomable by human comprehension. And then also, like, it's set in Antarctica, which is like At the Mountains of Madness, which is another film John Carpenter did explicitly based on a Lovecraft story. So like, it's just like that whole genre of horror where it's just like something that's so beyond human comprehension that people start going nuts. Like that scene when Wilford Brimley's character, his name escapes me at the moment, but he starts smashing up all of the samples and the radio equipment, and he's just like totally lost his mind at this point, because he's just like, he's the one who's been studying the samples they got back from the thing, and like they find his research notes and they're like, oh yeah, this thing's not from Earth, this thing is so like beyond our level of comprehension, like if this thing leaves this place, like Earth's done. And so like he's just like, I have to destroy everything, I have to like make sure nobody leaves this place because we don't know who is the thing at this point. So it's just like that madness that comes as a result of the unknown. Is a really cool theme to me.
You see elements of that. I don't think it gets mentioned a lot, but that is a good point you brought up. And like you see bits of that throughout the Halloween series. And
for sure.
in like the fog, sort of the story given for why some of the stuff is happening in the fog kind of ties into that. But yeah, it's not quite as overbearing, I think, as some of the Lovecraftian stuff can be, because this movie, like, it's one of those movies that most of it is serious, but a lot of the characters are so charismatic. It's one of those movies you like. It's not funny, but you will like kind of laugh at things or smile at things that the characters say, because like there are points where it's light and you have like just great characters who know each other. But then that plays into the distrust that builds once they realize, like, okay, I've known this. It's been just us here. I've known this guy. Why is he this guy anymore?
Exactly, because like the fact that there are those moments of levity between the really heavy, like suspenseful, dread-filled moments, like you care about the characters more, right? And like you're drawn, like you said, you're drawn into this sense that like, oh, like these guys have been stranded in this place that is so far from any other humanity for so long, and like this is literally their world right now, and this complete unknown is bringing it in and like making it to where they can't trust anyone who's been their entire world for these past couple months or however long they've been there. And it's just like so earth-shattering a concept for them, right? And like they really do a good job of making you feel that as well. And you know, I mentioned the score, but like I feel like Carpenter's work on like both his music that he's done outside of films and his music that he's done for his films is like actually really underrated, even though people talk about it a lot. I feel like it's still underrated because he's just so talented in that arena. Yeah,
it gets brought up a lot with like, you know, Halloween obviously is the big one that people will mention, but yeah, it can be undersold. That's another thing, like when you do so many things this well, it can be easy to overlook a couple of the things that you're doing. But yeah, I think the movie is one of those that's like conceptually, like you read the description, you're like, wow, this sounds like it could be a really good movie, but it probably won't live up to it. And it just like knocks it out of the park so much, because this is a sort of a remake or a retelling. It's also based on a novella that another film had been based on, but this one has gone on to be way more famous, even though when it released it was actually really poorly received, which was kind of insane to think about. I don't know how that happened, but anyways.
It's wild. I feel like a lot of those cult horror classic films that people like from that time period that people acknowledge as being like really influential and well made now, at the time when they first came out were viewed in a more negative light, or like they were viewed as more like kind of like just throwaway trash. When like I guess people were like, I don't know, like a little more puritanical in their thinking when it came to filmmaking and to the content that was being produced with it. Because there's I'm gonna get all like horror nerd for a minute, and I know you're gonna love that, but like in like the movies that were coming out in like the 40s through the 60s of like the that movement of horror that was just like the like transgressive style of horror, like the what's that movie called, that like 30 Days of Sodom or whatever.
Yeah.
Like movies like that are like, now they're kind of regarded in like this kind of like almost mythic light. But like whenever it came out back in the day, people were just like, what?
Yeah. This
Which
movie...
still to this day, sorry for cutting you off, but I will warn anybody who wants to look up that movie I just said. It's intense. Don't go in with like
I'm hoping
I would not recommend watching it unless you're like, yeah.
But there are, if you look at some of the reviews and how this movie was talked about, it is like, it's treated like a movie like that, where it's they talk about just the body horror elements of it, and how shocking and gross it is, and how it's just like too much, and they like hyper focus on that element of the movie and miss the really smart characterization and the plot point, where even like today we still aren't entirely sure at what points in the movie different people have been exchanged for the thing. And there's still just like fan theory videos that will go up that you can watch about trying to explain that. And the ending was really unclear until, oddly, the PS2 game, which is supposedly canon, clarified what happens at the end.
Not played the PS2 game.
It's apparently really good. It's like random, where you go in like after the fact, after the movie, and your like companions, it's not predetermined at all. Like sometimes you'll bring them in with you and they'll just be like fighting with you and stuff, but then sometimes they will betray you at some point because they've become the thing at some point in your playthrough.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And it's
really,
just random.
Yeah, and it
That's
really
so cool.
ties in with it. But and it gives.
Do you play as McCready, or do you play as like a person coming in after
you're like
the fact?
someone coming in who doesn't know what happened, like a military
Okay,
base.
that's more like with the movie, right? Like at the beginning when they find their Norwegian scientist camp that's been destroyed and whatnot, and they're coming in. There was a prequel that got made in like 2014, I think, that was really bad.
I think 2011. I think
2011. Okay, I knew it was some. I watched it, but I was not enthused, so I purged it from the memory. It was not very good at all. I heard rumors that they were talking about doing a remake, and I'm just like, why? There's no need.
The thing with the prequel was, which I don't think we'll ever see it, is that the film was done almost entirely with practical effects, and then the production company said no, do CGI, and they had to CGI over all of the practical effects, and like everything you see is done practically, and then they CGI on top of it. And it was really rushed and really awkward CGI to do because it wasn't planned, so it makes that movie look absolutely horrible, and we'll probably never get the Thing prequel, because it's like they knew if you're following up the Thing, you can't do bad CGI, like the people making it. But then the production company just forget that, I guess. Yeah,
because that was like I mean, I feel like in the early 2010s, that's when that shit was like super hot, right? Like that's when it was kind of like just becoming like, obviously CGI had been around for a little while, but like it was becoming more realistic, I guess. Like people were using it more frequently in movies to greater effect, I think.
Yeah.
And so like that's whenever the time period of like overkill started to happen, and people just started throwing it in fucking everything and just completely abandoning the concept of practical effects.
Yeah.
Which is a tragedy. I feel like there's been kind of a renaissance in recent years of people like acknowledging that it's an art form in and of itself and like kind of returning to that. But there were some rough years there. Yeah, it's another one of those things that it's a lot of it is Hollywood horror being not just unwilling, being kind of small nowadays, because they're not Marvel movies, and the practical effects, it's something that they're almost not set up by default to make anymore, because there is this reliance on CGI. So like they have this basically like this infrastructure set up to make CGI films,
and practical effects are so time and money consuming that it can be a rough sell. But we are getting, definitely in like this, a lot of smaller films, you're getting a lot more practical stuff, which is awesome. And it is a lot of influence from movies like The Thing that are just like, they have like, The Thing's not going to age poorly ever. It's pretty much gonna hold up forever.
It's the 40th anniversary this year for that film, and they are doing some like special screenings of it at the theater near my apartment, and I am absolutely going to see that whenever it goes up. I
have to see it.
So excited.
I can't remember when it is. I'm glad you reminded me of that because I probably would have missed the ticket because I forgot about it already. But yeah, I have to see that. If I don't, I'm gonna be so upset. Yeah,
for sure. Like, I mean, like, you know, I'm not going to presume to know how old you are, but obviously that film came out before I was born, as I said at the beginning of the interview, and like, how many times is it going to be re-released in theaters at this point? You know, so it's kind of a like once in a lifetime opportunity to go see it, and like, it's like I said, one of my favorite movies ever, so I'm definitely jumping on that.
I think my dad was 10 years old when that movie came out, so that's
oh, wow.
my age. A little hint on my age, but yeah, it's especially around where I live, there aren't that many showings of movies that aren't brand new. We don't get a lot of like specialty showings. It would be great to get more things like this, to get to experience a lot of old horror in theaters. It would be amazing, but it's not the case right now, unfortunately. But we do get good things like The Thing getting reshown, and you know, hopefully it gets an audience that it deserves.
Wait, I need to back up for a second. You said your dad was 10 years old when it came out?
Yeah, it came out 87, right?
82.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I was about to say, does that mean I'm only 8 years younger than your father? Because that makes me feel really old right now.
No. Okay, if that's the case, yeah, I'm 27. No.
Okay, yeah, that's better.
My dad would have been 5.
So yeah, I am 32, so that's much better. Yeah, but I mean, in terms of like the you know, we've touched on it, obviously, the legendary practical effects, but like, you know, certain specific iconic scenes that just make you kind of go like, wow, they do that.
Yeah.
Like the spider head thing. The spider head, the part whenever the doctor is like defibrillating the dude, and his stomach like opens and eats his hands.
That entire sequence is
legendary. Absolutely.
And then them trying to like it's kind of when they all realize like, oh my, this is way more than we can probably handle, when they like chop off part of it and then that part starts running around and moving by itself. And it's like, it's a great example when like every part of that works really well with like, those effects make you feel like, oh my god, how do you even, because it makes the thing feel so real, and you're
absolutely
like, how do you even deal with something that when you cut off its arm, the arm is its own body.
The arm becomes exactly
it just runs around and like, what do you, it feels like sort of hopeless and insane, and it's those effects really sell what they want you to feel there.
Exactly. And when they like, after that scene, when they realize that, and then there's that whole sequence of like, I think McCready and Childs like going out into the snow, and then like Childs freaks out and cuts McCready loose, and McCready's like out in the snow and then comes back in, and they're like, oh, he might be a thing, and he's like, no, Childs is the thing, because he's the one that like abandoned me out there. And they have that whole scene where they like tie everybody up and are like and you know, then there's that iconic scene we just talked about. Then there's the scene where they like tie everybody up and are like testing their blood.
Yeah.
And like just the paranoia of that scene, because they're like, okay, so like if this works the way we think it will, when we like test the blood will react as a separate creature and try and defend itself. So like there's that just tense moment of every time they stick the needle into the blood, like, oh, what's gonna happen? Is it gonna, and then like doesn't do it on the first one, doesn't do it on the second one, and then when it does it, they're like having a separate conversation because they've been lulled into a sense of security at this point, the way the audience has by the first couple like not doing anything, and they're like, oh yeah, blah blah blah, and then he sticks it in and the thing's just like
like just shoots out, because we're
shoots
like,
out of the petri dish.
We aren't really sure that it'll work either, or because even at that point in the movie, there's been a lot of suspicion cast on MacReady, who's the one who comes up with the idea, and we don't, we have no idea what's real at this point. And then that happens, and then the one guy who's tied up starts shaking. What it was.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, and then like the two guys who are still tied to the chair, tied to the guy that is clearly the thing, are like,
yeah, they sort of realize like, oh yeah, we just tied everybody together, knowing one of us is probably about to go off when we reveal that it's the thing, and then these guys are just tied up to him. Yeah, it's so, you get so many different like emotional responses here, where at first there's sort of tension, and then it's loosened up as they're going through the test and nothing's happening. And then there's this big like adrenaline spike when it does happen, and then you've got all these characters freaking out. It's like a roller coaster of a scene.
Yeah, and then there's the God, I don't know why I can't remember the character's name. I just remember Wilford Brimley. Wilford Brimley's character, ends up being the last thing, or what? Well, that we know of. And like MacReady has his little final showdown with that giant, like disgusting monster that he turns into. And then, that iconic ending where he's like sitting there in the snow and everything's burning down around him. And he's like, oh, well, like I've just got this bottle of liquor. Like I'm just going to like sit here and freeze to death, but at least the thing's dead. And then Childs walks out, like sits down with him, and they're like, it's so tense, but like they're both just so fucking tired and resigned at this point. Like, waiting for their lights to die and like just passing the bottle back and forth, and like, oh, we don't know if one of us is the thing, so let's just sit here.
And there's sort of the like the theory that it's not alcohol, it's a Molotov cocktail, and because we never see him actually sip from it, and he hands it to Childs to presumably try to figure out, like, if he does sip it and doesn't say anything, that he's one of them.
Oh god.
Which is really cool.
That is cool. I actually have not heard that theory. That's really awesome.
Yeah, and so according,
that just adds to the horror though, because like if that is the case, and like he hands it to him and like Childs doesn't react, and then hands it back to him, and he's just like sitting there like, okay,
one more.
I know what's going on now.
Because he can sort of like, if that isn't the case, he's screwed basically no matter what. They were all sort of screwed no matter what, but he was successful at least until that moment. And if Childs is one of them and is still around when people show up to find out what happened, then they failed and it was all pointless.
Yeah, because I mean, God, and it was great because like they cast a lot of suspicion throughout the entire movie on both MacReady and Childs as kind of like the two biggest personalities in the little group they had, and each of them were trying to like kind of take charge and like be like, oh no, I don't trust him, like and then like the fact that it came down to those two, and like just the last scene is just them both beat to shit, like so fucking resigned, and they're like, I don't trust you and I don't trust you, but like, good god.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? It's just,
there's nothing at that point.
Yeah, so I guess I'll mention that. So at least last I heard, this may have been changed, but yeah, that the PS2 game I was mentioning, John Carpenter had said that was all canon, everything that takes place in that.
I need to look that up.
And in that game, I know MacReady, the people who show up to save or to find out what happened, MacReady is still alive, and I believe Childs is as well, and neither of them were a thing, and they're both managed to be saved, if I remember correctly. I know MacReady is at least, but and I don't know if that's still considered canon, or John Carpenter just said that to help sell the game or what, but it's a pretty cool game. I haven't played it, but I've seen a lot about it, and it's really cool.
Yeah, I kind of want to look up more about it now. I didn't even like.
It's really weird that the thing even got a PlayStation 2 game to
begin
with, like 20 years later.
I was about to say, the PS2, like, when the fuck did the PS2 come out? The thing was definitely already, like, long out of theaters by that point.
Yeah, I don't know, because it was also, like, too early for it to be a tie-in for the prequel.
For the prequel, yeah.
So it may have been something to do with, like, they started the game to tie in with the prequel, and then the prequel got delayed. I really don't know the story on it. That would make sense, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
or maybe it was, like, an anniversary thing or something.
Yeah. And just them trying to make money off of PS2 games, which everybody's doing.
Yeah, that tracks. Sorry, I got a text message. Okay. Yeah, and good God, that movie. Trying to think. There was something else I wanted to say about it, but I got distracted by the PS2 game because I was like so excited that existed. But yeah, I mean, no, it's just a great movie, and Kurt Russell's hair looks fantastic throughout the whole film somehow.
Yeah, it does. This was a few years ago. This was kind of like, it was for Halloween, but I would say this was my first cosplay attempt where I fully cosplayed McCready. And got
great.
The exact same jacket, and just tried to emulate the hair, but I was just like, I can't do it. I can't get it right.
It's that 80s like full feathered fluff that he has going on throughout the whole movie.
A lot of the like best aspects of 80s horror, just like the atmosphere that they get that is so uniquely 80s is like done so well in this movie that even if you don't like a lot of it, like if you for something like you don't like body horror or the paranoia, it's too slow for you, like it's hard not to get into the movie because it just feels so like spooky and eerie, and it looks so gorgeous.
Yeah, they, like I said, they do a great job of cultivating that atmosphere that kind of like keeps you on the like cliche edge of your seat, but like literally.
Yeah.
And you know, and like you said, it does start off kind of slow, but the way they do it, like once it goes off, like everything is 90 to nothing after that point. And like the body horror obviously is turns off some people and draws in some other people, but like we already covered, I think because the body horror is so like, and the practical effects are like so front and center, I feel like a lot of the other really masterful like acting and filmmaking aspects of it go a little bit under the radar for I mean, obviously, except for people who like really enjoy the movie. But there's a reason it's a classic, right?
Yep. And there's some of I've done some of these that are like classic movies that can be kind of hard to think of anything to talk about. This one is just like, it's got so much going for it.
There's so much to talk about.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that I don't think will age, and people will be talking about like 50 years after this, if there are people to talk about it, like an Alien or something along those lines. That
right.
It's just, yeah, it's just great. There's so much going for it.
I mean, Alien's another early like 80s horror movie that lives near and dear to my heart. That whole like there were like a sequence of just like really great kind of like movies that weren't explicitly cosmic horror but drew on a lot of tropes of cosmic horror, and kind of like turned it on its head and did their own thing with it. So it's like, hey, we're gonna borrow some of the tenets of like Lovecraftian horror but like do our own thing with it, and kind of make all these different little branching subgenres from the overall theme of cosmic horror, which I really love. But that permeating feeling of like dread of the unknown, I think, is the common thread that links all of them. And like Alien and The Thing and like all those films, like definitely are heavy into that aspect of like cosmic horror. And like, you know, disclaimer, like obviously H.P. Lovecraft is a terrible human being. But the stories that he wrote and the genre of horror that he inspired is pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
even if he himself held some really, really heinous, shitty beliefs.
Yeah. And it's not like you're, it is impossible to support H.P. Lovecraft directly now because he is very, very dead.
Very dead, and most of his works are probably public domain at this point.
Yeah, most of them are.
Yeah, so nice. You can read his stories without giving money to his estate.
Yeah. Yeah, there's it's definitely like,
for those unaware, he was very racist.
Yeah. Like this has come up a few times. Just like we get so little sci-fi horror that we almost have to look back to this era, like late 70s, early 80s, to get good stuff from it. And it's
I guess Alien was like 79, wasn't it? The first one.
Alien.
Yeah. Jesus.
Yep. And we get movies like The Thing and Alien, and it's good that we have those. I wish we got more movies like that. Of course, those don't come along that often, but I mean, that was in a 3-year span. They got Alien and then The Thing, so they were living it up back then, I guess.
Yeah, for real. I mean, I know this isn't Alien is not the film we're talking about, but in that vein of like similar film, like obviously two very different films, but very similar in the fact that they both both from the same time period, both use practical effects, both like sci-fi horror, some similar themes going on of that like kind of paranoia, super tense,
very isolated
atmosphere. Very isolated, exactly. That is a huge aspect to both of those movies, is the fact that there's nowhere to run, really.
Yeah.
Right? Like in The Thing, they're in fucking Antarctica. Like, where are you gonna go?
Yeah.
And then in Alien, obviously, they're on a spaceship. So whether you're in the middle of frozen tundra or cold space, like there's nowhere to fucking go.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was more recently, like I don't remember exactly when it came out, but Prometheus was that was like the 6th movie in the Alien universe, I think.
Not counting the Alien versus Predator movies, I think that's the 5th, because it's 1, 2, 3 Resurrection, Prometheus, and then Alien Covenant, I think. Okay. Because I just know that there were some more recent ones. I saw Prometheus and I enjoyed it, but I haven't seen Alien Covenant. I enjoyed Prometheus and I was very excited for Alien Covenant, and I very much hated it.
Okay, well, at least I know not to get my hopes up when I finally do see it. I actually have,
but not for me.
For Christmas one year, my partner at the time got me a box set of all the Alien movies up to Prometheus. Because like I'm just a huge fan of those films, so I was like really psyched about that. But so that was like, I liked the marketing for that because they didn't even you didn't know it was an Alien movie until you got there, really. But I would not be opposed to doing another movie in the universe of The Thing, but not directly related to the first film, because I feel like the prequel failed for the reasons we talked about, obviously. Also, I feel like it removes a bit of the mysticism of the story to know more what happened. It's more like it kind of removes a bit of the mystique, right? Like you need to have that element of unknown for that brand of horror to work properly.
Yeah.
I feel like it would be like kind of similar if they did a direct sequel, but maybe like something in a shared universe would be kind of cool.
Yeah, you could definitely do like adapt a similar story without touching on something like you clearly, like you don't have to set it in Antarctica to get the same feeling of isolation. Like you said, you could make this movie in the universe of The Thing, and it's set 500 years in the future, and they're spacefaring, and when they find the planet that these things are from, and that's going to be a completely different type of movie, but you could still...
I mean, oh god, that would be insane. That's giving me like Annihilation vibes.
Yeah,
that like just alien world of like all these fucking like, what are my cats doing? Oh my god. Yeah. Body horror, cosmic horror, love it all.
Yep.
Let's go.
Anything else you want to touch on with this movie?
I think we talked about everything I wanted to talk about the movie and more. I will say, despite the fact that this is not in the deck we're going to be talking about, I love the card Thing in the Ice just for the like, just for that little subtle nod.
Yeah. Yep. That's what I always think of when I see that card too.
Yeah, I'm just card. Like, it's a pretty good card. B, it's a thing, and it's in the ice. And in the movie, it's the thing, and it's in the ice.
Yeah.
I always love that. Anyway.
So, let's move on to the deck that you brought on today. What deck is that?
I actually have the deck around here somewhere. But we're going to be talking about my Varragoth, the Blood Sky Sire deck. I've played this deck on stream a number of times at this point. It is not one of my higher power decks. I'd say it's like about mid power level. Like it's got some pretty, it's pretty optimized and efficient, but it looks more to have long, like back and forth games because the entire theme of the deck deals with the devil and introducing heavy politics into the game because I really wanted to make Demon Tribal because I wanted to have at least one deck that used Liliana's Contract as a win con because it feels criminal not to.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So I made this deck, and initially my plan was to use Obnixilis Unshackled as the commander and do a similar theme of like, oh, you're going to tutor, like, you know, you take 10 damage and sacrifice a creature, and I get some stuff, but you can tutor. But then upon reading, you know, like doing more research for the deck, I already knew Varragoth existed because I had pulled one of the showcase ones from a box of Kaldheim that I bought, and the showcase art for Varragoth is really fucking cool. I kind of want to go grab my deck real quick. I'll be right back. All right, just fix that in post. Pretend I was prepared.
Yep. Easy.
All right. So Varragoth, Blood Sky Sire. Some of the most like fucking metal art on a card, like ever.
Did that one? What is it? Ferja? I think her name.
Yeah. I love that one.
It looks so cool.
Yeah. That was the last standard deck I built before I stopped really playing standard and just started focusing solely on EDH. Was like Orzhov Angels with all the cool angels that came out in that set. So Varragoth has a boast ability, which was a keyword that I believe Kaldheim was the first time boast was a thing. Which is whenever you attack, if you attacked this turn, you can activate the boast ability. So it's not like a damage trigger or anything. It's just an attack trigger, or not even an attack trigger. It's just if you attacked, you can activate it. So as long as you have declared an attack with Varragoth, you can pay the cost to boast. But Varragoth set is a 2/3 Death Touch Demon Rogue. 2 colorless, 1 black, and says boast 1 colorless, 1 black. Target player searches their library for a card and puts it on top of it. So, you know, I mean, initially upon seeing the card, I was like, oh, cool. It's a vampiric tutor on a stick, essentially. But it's target player, right?
Yeah.
So that opens up a lot of other possibilities because so in the deck, I run cards like Obnixilis Unshackled, who says anytime someone searches their library, anytime an opponent searches their library, they take 10 damage, sacrifice a creature, and I think you also put a counter on Ob, +1/+1 counter.
Some amount of counters on them, I think. I
believe it's 1/+1/+1, because the landfall one gets 3 +1/+1s. So, and then like opposition agent, obviously, just like all kinds of things that make your opponent double, like think twice about tutoring. Field of Ruin, I've had fun games in that deck where I have utilized Varragoth's ability to force someone to tutor after using OG Soren Markov's -3 ability to set their life total to 10, and then killed them with Obnixilis Unshackled by forcing them to tutor. Just silly things like that the deck is capable of. It's a lot of fun. The whole theme is just forcing everyone to make difficult choices. So like there's a demon in there that called Sower of Discord that essentially when it comes into play, it links two players' life totals. When one player takes damage, the other player takes that much damage.
Yeah.
Then like I run stuff like Mind Crank. Every time someone loses life, they mill that many cards. So like, oh, I'll let you tutor to the top. Oh, I'm sorry, you had to mill it. And then Archfiend of Despair, who like is Wound Reflection on a stick, but also opponents can't gain life. So it just puts a timer on everything. It's so much fun. Scheming Symmetry is another really fun one, especially if Obnixilis is on board, because it just has 2 target players, right? It doesn't have opponents. To be. Yeah, you can do 2 opponents. So I'm just like, oh, I killed both of you guys for 1 black mana. Sorry.
Yep. Yeah, you can do like, obviously, all of this becomes even rougher with cards like Opposition Agent out.
Yeah, and I run Op Agent in here. I run, like I said, it's not like a battle cruiser deck. It's not as high power as a lot of my other decks, but it's built more for fun. But it is pretty punishing at times too.
Yeah. It's like it's optimized, but it's optimized to do a really unique, more niche sort of thing.
Exactly. I also I run Wishclaw Talisman in here, cEDH staple Wishclaw Talisman, which instead of just being a cheap tutor in here that I intend to win on that turn with, it's also something like, hey, I'll give you a tutor. You want a tutor? Sure.
Yeah, that's
it's gonna cost you.
Because it is a genuine cEDH staple, but also it is like a casual politics engine sort of thing.
Absolutely.
It gets gameplay really interesting.
Also, Peer into the Abyss I use in here, not just for its normal intended purpose of drawing your entire library, or half your library, but you can also target other people with Peer into the Abyss. I have killed someone off of a Peer into the Abyss before by forcing them to draw half their library and then mill the rest of it.
Oh, man.
It's a fun deck. It can be kind of crazy at times, but it's a lot of fun. I do need to shout out Vote Checkbox on Twitter because she made me this proxy of Scheming Symmetry. If you're familiar with the 2 of them cats, the little meme of the cats, it's like the 2 little gray cats, and it says. It just says 2 of them on it. So, obviously the only art for Scheming Symmetry was done by someone who's expressed some pretty not great political opinions. So I was like, I need this card for this deck. Like it kind of makes the whole thing work. But I really would rather not have that art front and center. So I'm going to look into getting like an altar or a proxy or something. And Evelyn came through with that one. I was really excited about that.
I'm surprised we haven't got a new art in like a command. Like I feel like that card in a commander focus set makes so much sense. Like putting it in the new Commander Legends would have made.
Yeah, it would have made sense for sure. Yeah, because like it's a cool card in and of itself. Like again, both for like formats that need tutoring more, like cEDH, and then formats that just like politics more, like casual commander. Like Scheming Symmetry is just such a cool card. 1 black mana, 2 people Vampiric Tutor. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, you get to do cool cards. Like one I really love is Temporal Extortion.
Yes, I love that card so much. So the best thing about that card is, I mean, it never goes off, right? Someone always counters it because no one's going to let you have an extra turn. my favorite thing to do is to have, like, because that card can be tricky to use because, like, you just need to know when to play it, right? You have to be able to capitalize on it because, like, you're either having someone's life total for 4 black mana, or you're getting an extra turn, which either way that can end the game. It just depends on how you play your cards after that. So the way I love to use it is to, with the knowledge in mind that someone is probably going to counter it and who that person will probably be, have a method to kill said person after they have their life total in my hand already. Yeah. And then, like, play the card and be like, oh, who wants to counter it? And then, you know, just go from there.
That's a card where people will naturally sort of priority bully. And they'll be like, well, we have to counter it, so pass. And then it gets to the last person. They have to counter, and then you're just like, look, if you counter this, I'm going to kill you. It's
so much fun. Also, the greatest thing to do is play that whenever I have Liliana's contract on board. It's like, okay, so, like, if this resolves, I win the game, so someone has to pay half their life total.
Yeah.
Another fun thing.
Deal with the devil feel that you're going for.
Exactly. It's the whole, like, Faustian deal, because, you know, I thought about like my whole gimmick, like, if any of you guys follow me on Twitter, like, you know, my whole gimmick is like, I most of my decks are mono black. Like, that's my whole jam. I make as many mono black decks as possible, whether it be for EDH or cEDH. I'm always trying to make black mana do the most it can. So that's, like, just my whole gimmick, right? But so I wanted to make a mono black demon deck because demons are cool. I wanted to win with Liliana's contract, and but, you know, a lot of great demons and devils are in Rakdos, you know? So I was like, what am I going to do with this? But Rakdos is more like a, you know, we're going to kill you as fast as possible and just beat you into nothing. A lot of burn, a lot of, like, creature destruction, a lot of just stuff like that. And I was like, I'd rather do something a little more, like, insidious with it, like lean into that Faustian deal with the devil type thing. So that's really what I went for with a lot of the card choices here.
Yeah. Yeah, it gives you, like I said, you can kind of go all out on a build like this and it not be oppressive, because it is kind of like you are going for this certain, like, thematic more than win the game every single game.
Yeah, for sure. Because I have, like, a bunch of, like, really powerful cards in here. Like, I have Necropotence, I have Archfiend of Despair is, like, a pretty backbreaking card when it hits the board. I mean, I've got a bunch of tutors in here. I've got Peer into the Abyss. Like, there's a bunch of powerful cards in here. It's just the way you play them, right? Yeah. Because this deck, because of the nature of demons in and of themselves, like, being very high costed, and the fact that it is demon tribal, it kind of just looks to control the game until it gets to the point where it can start dropping big demons. So, like, and one of the ways I limit myself when I'm building a casual deck is I try not to include any, like, very efficient fast mana in it.
Yeah.
So I have an Ancient Tomb in there, but I don't have, like, a Mana Crypt, right? Like, because an Ancient Tomb, that's still taking up your land drop for turn. So I think it's a little less egregious than a free Mana Rock, right? Yeah. Like, so I don't run any Moxen or like Crypt or anything, or like Mana Vault or anything like that in there. Even though, all my demons are super expensive. I'd love to get them out faster, but, like, you know, that's not the level I'm looking to play that deck at. So I didn't include them in there. I do have Heartless Summoning in there, is phenomenal in this deck.
That's it's enchantment?
It's an enchantment. One colorless, one black enchantment from one of the original Innistrad sets. I don't remember which one, but it says creatures you cast cost 2 colors less, and but creatures you control also get -1/-1, which really isn't that big of a deal because demons are fucking huge normally. So, and also I'm not looking to win by combat damage most of the time. So, like, demons are just there to protect my life while I do gross shit.
Yeah, you don't really care about the stat thing, because usually, their stats are big and they just have strong effects, is why they're so expensive.
Exactly. And another thing is that, like, so many demons have so many black pips on them. Like, it's not just colorless cost. It's a huge amount of like 3 or 4 black pips on average per demon. So like a ton of like quick colorless mana producing rocks wouldn't really do me that much good anyway. Like I have Soul Ring in there, and I have like a Jet Medallion in there, but like stuff like Nyx Lotus is crazy in here because like I have so many, like it's a slower rock, right? But because it comes in tapped, but it nets me like 12 mana per tap.
You have a lot of devotion to black.
Exactly. And then stuff like Gary and Nykthos are also super crazy in here. Gary wins me more games than Liliana's Contract ever has with this deck.
Yeah, that's a really cool way to win, but obviously having to get all
not
the
super
demons
efficient.
out, wait a turn. Yeah, that's where the like you said, the temporal extortion can be the way to secure that, but then nobody's gonna let it happen when you already have it.
Yeah, for sure. So I recently added Emergence Zone into that deck because I really want to try and win with the contract because it very infrequently happens. Mm-hmm. So I was like being able to cast it at instant speed would probably like literally like go to end step, okay, flash in Liliana's Contract.
Yeah.
Beginning of next turn. There we go. Haven't won like that yet, but we're gonna make it happen at some point.
Yeah, that's a really cool one. Again, it's one of those things that is like cEDH staple, but it also is like it can make these kind of sort of ridiculous to achieve win cons actually viable. With there are so many like you win the game, but on upkeep, and they get really hard to do. And
like Mortal Kombat or like cards like that, like that force you to wait a turn, because then like if there's those kinds of cards are a lot more effective with less people in the pod, right? Like if you still have all 4 people playing at that point and you drop that card, you've got 3 people gunning for you the entire next turn cycle. So you better have held up enough like interaction to be able to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like it's good in that with like Liliana's, like if they remove that specifically, then you still have a board of 4 demons with different names, which is pretty good. But if they like wipe the board, then it's kind of double hits you. You got the enchantment, but it doesn't really do much, and it's hard to rebuild. But
exactly. I mean, it just feels bad, right? When you pay like 5 mana to pay 4 life and draw 4 cards, and then it gets removed without getting to do the second half of it. Yeah. So like, if you cast it, you want to be able to make sure that you're gonna win. Like, it's more of a flavor win than anything else, but it's in there for sure because it would feel like disingenuous to build the deck and not put it in there.
Yeah, for sure.
Where is it? The only thing that is another fun thing in here. This has only actually come up once, but it's really funny whenever it does. So I run Tainted Pact in here, which is like we talked about, like another like kind of C staple, but I don't use it in the same fashion that you would in that kind of a setting. Like there was one time I tutored a Varragoth and then someone tried to force me to mill a card off the top of my library, and I was just like, Tainted Pact, it's in my hand now. And Exquisite Blood I run in there as well because Exquisite Blood like has a reputation just as being part of Blood Bond, right? But it's really strong on its own also because like you're just gaining so much life. But I don't run Sanguine Bond in here. I literally just so many demons costs and so many like of the black cards that are in here force you to pay life to activate their effects. I'm like, okay, I just need to like replenish a little bit. And it can get out of hand pretty good, especially if you've got like Archfiend of Despair on board along with Exquisite Blood. Then it's just like, okay, everyone feel free to attack each other. I'm fine over here.
Yeah, it's definitely, this is one of those decks that I think you could it really represents its color extremely well. Like as like if you had to show somebody like, hey, what does black do? You could just be like, here you go. This is the deck. This is what black does.
Absolutely. It's kind of the vibe I wanted whenever I went to build it. Like it has a ton of mono black staples in it. It's just the way they're used in the deck is very much in the spirit of like, I feel what black mana was originally like, and Magic is as Richard Garfield intended, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, just the essence of black mana. Also, killing someone with a sign in blood is the greatest feeling in the world.
Yeah. Yep. I always tell people, it's like, look, you should run what's the other one? Freaking, it's 1 in a black. It's like it's strictly better.
Night's Whisper.
Yeah.
Night's Whisper.
It's like strictly better, except technically.
Except you can target other people with sign in blood.
With it, but. You know.
I mean, you know, I when I originally drafted the list, I had Night's Whisper in there, and then I was like, wait a minute. Sign in Blood is super thematic because Sign in Blood, like Demon Contract, blah 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 blah. That's very thematic. And then B, like the 2 black pips isn't really a problem, right?
Yeah,
like because that's why.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, in mono black it doesn't matter. Night's Whisper. That's why Night's Whisper is strictly better because it's a colorless and a black, so it's easier to cast.
Yeah.
But in this deck, sometimes it's actually easier to get the double black. So I might as well just cast Sign in Blood and have it as a potential really funny win con in addition to being card draw.
Watch out for deflecting swats. It's the only other downside. Gotta watch out for those.
Oh man.
But yeah, anything else you want to touch on with the list?
God, there is one thing I want to talk about in the theme of the whole tough choices thing.
Yeah.
As we Commander players know, Treasure be running wild in Commander right now, and so a few months ago, just before the release of Streets of New Capenna, whenever they were like hyping up all the new cards and like, you know, they showed off Bootlegger Stash and like all these like crazy treasure producing cards. And then we already had stuff like Old Gnawbone and like, you know, Smothering Tithe and shit already existing. And my friend Amplitude on Twitter, who also streams on Twitch at Amplitude TV. He's super cool. Definitely recommend checking him out. As a fellow mono black player, messaged me and was like, hey, you need to pick up one of these cards because it's going to skyrocket in price after New Capenna comes out. And so I picked one up for about $20, and I think on TCG Player it's going for like 90 now. And it's Haunting Wind, which is an enchantment from God, what set is this? Antiquities, I think. That it's 3 colorless and a black, and it just says each time an artifact in play is tapped or its activation cost is paid, Haunting Wind deals 1 damage to that artifact's controller, and it is not triggered by continuous artifacts. So just like, you know, every time someone activates a treasure or a rock, little poke.
Yeah.
Which can get out of hand quickly, especially if I've got any of the like damage amplification stuff going on. So that's a ton of fun to do. But yeah, I'm just blown away by how much the price for that card has skyrocketed.
Yeah, people are... I think like some of the treasure hating cards can be pretty good. I think people overhype them a little bit in how effective they'll be in the average game.
Definitely agree. This is the only deck that I run this card in, even though it's like I said, I run a lot of mono black, but like I'm not taking up a whole slot just to punish someone for running treasures. In this deck, it's more thematic because it's like the whole hard choices thing, right? But a lot of my other mono blacks actually use activated abilities of artifacts as a win con. So like Aetherflux Reservoir or Phyrexian Altar are 2 cards that I use in a lot of my decks as win con. So I'm like, I'm not gonna put a card that could potentially kill me if I if I use it. You can have your treasure. I'm just gonna go over here and go infinite with Phyrexian Altar.
Yeah, it goes with the theme and what you're trying to do here.
Exactly. So that's like, if it was still $90, I would not even look at it. But the fact that I picked it up for 20 is that's just very thematic for the deck.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and Magic prices are wild.
Magic prices are truly insane.
Yeah. I don't even try to
keep
up
with them anymore.
Have you seen the price for
those double Masters boxes?
I don't even need to look at those.
It's disgusting.
I did try. I was sort of collecting a lot of the full art, like foil borderless ones in the first double Masters, but that's just very hard to keep up with there. Especially, it looks like in this set, they're doing that at like 3 different rarities. So that's gonna be a ridiculous amount of cards. Like,
yeah, it's nuts. It's really nuts. Like, I'm sure the set will have great reprints in it, but like at the same time, like, I'm not paying $300 for a box. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and it's also like, this seems like so obviously like where we're gonna get cards that should have been reprinted in more affordable ways. Like Dockside was the big one. Imperial Seal, please, at some point.
Jeez, what blows me away about Imperial Seal? Like, obviously, it's one mana tutor, right? Like, that's cool. What blows me away about Imperial Seal is it's just a strictly worse vampiric tutor, right? But it's only been printed once in an actual set, and then once as a promo, right? That's why it's so expensive. Like, it's a good card, but there are cards that are more readily available that do better things. But because it's only been printed so few times, it's just an outlandish price, and it makes no sense. Like, reprint Imperial Seal, you cowards.
They've been doing it because like Grim Tutor was another one that was in that spot until like M20 or 21. 3 Visits was one that was like, we literally had the same card with Nature's Lore, and it just took them forever to print 3 Visits, which thankfully now is like plummeted in price.
Yeah, it definitely has. I think isn't it in one of the new precons?
Yeah, it's in like they're putting it out in everything. Like, it was in both Commander Legends sets, like common or uncommon. So
good.
Imperial Seal, I'm like 90% sure will stay. It will be mythic in some expensive set like this one, probably.
Of course.
Which is,
as long as it's not $1,500 fucking dollars,
Yeah, it being the most expensive non-reserve list card is just ridiculous. So we can hopefully we can stop that at least. But proxy your cards, everybody.
Proxy, I have a bunch of proxies in this deck, actually. I only have 1 copy of Necropotence, and I run it in multiple decks, so this is a proxy.
Yeah.
My actual Necropotence is in my Yawgmoth deck.
But where can people find you, or do you have any other like shout outs or things you're working on you want to mention?
Yeah, for sure. I'm Liliana, as we covered at the beginning of the episode. You can find me on both Twitch and Twitter at DefiantNecro. That's also my username on Moxfield if you want to look at any of my decks.
All right. Thank you for coming on. Thank you guys for watching. More episodes like this. Lots of other Magic content creators coming on, talking about their favorite cards, horrors, and everything we go off topic about. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.